He was already a legend, the top tank ace of the war, credited with more kills than any other American armor commander in history. But on a frozen ridge in the Ardennes, his Sherman lay crippled and smoking behind him, and a 57-ton King Tiger was grinding forward to finish off his platoon. He had no tank, he had no backup, he had one bazooka and 6 rockets. He walked straight at the monster. This is the story of Staff Sergeant Lafayette G. Poole, the tank ace of aces, and what he did in December 1944 on the snow-covered slopes of Elsenborn Ridge would prove that some men are simply incapable of quitting, even when every rational calculation says they should be dead. The date was December 17, 1944, the second day of the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last desperate gamble in the West. The place was Elsenborn Ridge, a critical piece of high ground in eastern Belgium that controlled the roads to the Meuse River, and beyond it, the port of Antwerp. If the German 6th Panzer Army could seize this ridge, their armored spearheads would have a clear highway to split the Allied armies in two. The 99th Infantry Division, green and untested, held the line alongside battle-hardened veterans of the 2nd Infantry Division. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing the elite 12th SS Panzer Division, the Hitler Youth. And into this cauldron rode Lafayette Poole, a tank commander from Texas, who had spent the summer tearing through France at the head of the 3rd Armored Division. He had destroyed 258 German vehicles in 81 days. He had survived 3 Shermans. He had refused a commission to stay with his men. But on this frozen morning, he was about to face his greatest test without a tank. Lafayette Green Poole was born on July 23, 1919, on a farm in Odom, Texas, a small town near Corpus Christi. He had a twin brother, John Thomas, and a fierce competitive streak that would define his entire life. After graduating from high school in Taft, Texas, in 1938, he attended the Texas College of Arts and Industries in Kingsville, studying engineering. But the war interrupted his education. On June 13, 1941, Poole enlisted in the Army at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. He was 21 years old, 6 feet 3 inches tall, and built like a welterweight boxer, which he was. Before the war, he had competed in amateur boxing with considerable success. Poole was assigned to the newly forming 3rd Armored Division and trained as a tanker at Camp Beauregard, Louisiana. From the beginning, he was different. He was aggressive, cocky, and utterly convinced that he and his crew were the best in the division. He called his men, "my pups." They called him War Daddy. He suffered from claustrophobia, a strange affliction for a tanker. He could not stand being buttoned up inside the cramped turret. Whenever possible, he rode with his upper body exposed, sitting on top of the tank, like a cowboy on a horse. His commander once described him as riding his tank like a bucking bronco. This should have gotten him killed. Snipers, shrapnel, machine gun fire. He was completely exposed. But Poole believed he could not command effectively with his vision restricted by periscopes. He needed to see the battlefield. He needed to feel the fight. In December 1942, Poole married Evelyn Wright while on leave. By then, he had already established himself as a non-commissioned officer who refused promotion. Twice he turned down offers of a commission offers that would have made him an officer, given him higher pay, and removed him from the front lines. He wanted to stay with his crew. He wanted to fight. In September 1943, the 3rd Armored Division shipped out for Europe. They trained in England for months, preparing for the invasion that everyone knew was coming. Poole continued his boxing, even sparring with world heavyweight champion Joe Louis in a 1944 exhibition match. The champion knocked him around, but Poole never went down. That was his nature. The 3rd Armored Division landed in France in June 1944, just weeks after D-Day. Poole was assigned to Company I, 3rd Battalion, 32nd Armored Regiment, commanding an M4A1 Sherman tank he named In the Mood. Over the next 81 days, he and his crew driver Wilbert Red Richards, gunner Willis Groundhog Oler, loader Delbert Jailbird Boggs, and assistant driver Bertrand Schoolboy Close would become the most lethal tank team in the U.S. Army. They fought through the hedgerows of Normandy, the breakout at St. Gall, the pursuit across France, and the siege of German border fortifications. In 21 major engagements, they destroyed 12 German tanks, mostly Panthers, along with 258 total armored vehicles and self-propelled guns. They killed an estimated 1,000 German soldiers and captured 250 more. By September, Poole was a legend. He had lost 2 Shermans, one to a Panzerfaust, one to friendly fire from AP-38 Lightning, but each time he climbed into a new tank and kept fighting. On September 19, 1944, Poole's war almost ended. His 3rd Sherman, in the Mood 3, was leading the attack against the Siegfried Line near Münsterbusch, southeast of Aachen. A German Panther, hidden in ambush, fired at close range. The round penetrated the Sherman's ammunition rack. As the driver tried to reverse, a second round struck, tipping the tank into a ditch and throwing Poole from the turret. His right leg was mangled beyond repair, shattered bone, torn flesh, massive blood loss. He later recalled looking down and seeing his leg folded like an accordion. While waiting for medics, he pulled out a small knife and began trying to cut away the destroyed portion of his own limb. The leg was amputated 8 inches above the knee. His war was over. Or so everyone thought. Poole spent months in hospitals, recovering, learning to walk with a prosthesis. He was discharged from the Army in 1946, opened a filling station in Texas, and tried to build a civilian life. But the peace didn't suit him. In 1948, he enlisted, eventually returning to the 3rd Armored Division as an instructor at Fort Knox. By December 1944, however, Poole was not supposed to be anywhere near the front. He was still recovering from his wounds, still adjusting to his artificial leg. But when the German offensive burst through the Ardennes on December 16, Poole was visiting forward units near Elsenborn Ridge, observing, advising, doing what he could to help. He had no official combat role. He was not assigned to any unit in the line. He was simply there, as he always was, where the fighting was thickest. The situation on Elsenborn Ridge was desperate. The German plan Operation Wacht am Rhein called for the 6th Panzer Army, under SS Oberstgruppenführer Josef Dietrich, to smash through the American lines and seize the high ground east of the Meuse. The 12th SS Panzer Division, the elite Hitler Youth, was tasked with taking Elsenborn Ridge itself. Opposing them were the Green Troops of the 99th Infantry Division and the veterans of the 2nd Infantry Division, rushed north to plug the gap. They were outnumbered nearly 2 to 1, 28,000 Americans against 56,000 Germans. They had limited anti-tank weapons and faced the full weight of German armor. On the morning of December 17th, the Germans launched their main assault against the twin villages of Rocherath and Krinkelt, the gateway to Elsenborn Ridge. Panther tanks, supported by Panzer Grenadiers, surged forward through the fog and snow. The American defenders, a mix of infantry, engineers, and tank destroyers, fought desperately to hold. Among the American armor was a platoon of Sherman tanks from the 741st Tank Battalion, supporting the infantry. They were badly outmatched by the German Panther's superior armor, superior guns, superior range. The Shermans took heavy losses. And somewhere in that maelstrom, watching from a command post or a forward observation point, was Lafayette Poole. The details of what happened next have been pieced together from fragmentary accounts, witness statements, after-action reports, the memories of men who were there. The exact unit designations and precise timeline are lost to history. But the core of the story is consistent, told and retold by men who saw it with their own eyes. A German King Tiger tank, the most feared armored vehicle on the battlefield, had broken through the American lines. Weighing 57 tons, armed with an 88mm gun that could destroy a Sherman at 2,000 yards, armored with 150mm of frontal steel that no American tank gun could penetrate. It was a monster. It had already knocked out several Shermans and was advancing on the infantry positions, its machine guns raking the American foxholes. The American tank platoon in that sector was pinned down, taking heavy fire, unable to retreat. If the Tiger reached their position, they would be annihilated. Poole saw what was happening. He was on foot, his artificial leg making every step agony on the frozen ground. He had no tank, no crew, no weapon, except a .45 pistol on his hip. But he saw the Tiger grinding forward, and he saw the American tankers trapped in its path. He grabbed a bazooka. The M9A1 rocket launcher was a desperate weapon against a King Tiger. The 2.36-inch shaped charge could theoretically penetrate 4 inches of armor, but the Tiger's frontal armor was nearly 6 inches thick, sloped for additional protection. Against the side or rear, a bazooka round might succeed if fired at close range, if it struck at the perfect angle, if the German crew didn't see it coming. Poole began to walk. He moved across the open ground, exposed, limping, the bazooka cradled in his arms. Snow covered the field, but not enough to hide him. German infantry saw him and opened fire. Rounds snapped past his head, kicking up puffs of snow at his feet. He did not stop. The Tiger's crew was focused on the American tanks ahead. They did not see the lone figure approaching from their flank, a ghost in the snow, dragging one leg, carrying a weapon that looked like a toy against their massive steel fortress. Poole closed to 50 yards. He knelt in the snow, a difficult maneuver with his prosthetic leg, and aimed the bazooka at the Tiger's side just behind the turret. The side armor was thinner there, maybe 80 millimeters, and behind it lay the ammunition storage. He fired. The rocket streaked across the snow, trailing smoke, and struck the Tiger's hull. It bounced off a glancing blow, insufficient angle, the shaped charge failing to detonate properly. The Tiger's crew, alerted now, began to traverse their turret. Poole reloaded. He fired again. This round struck the track guard, exploding harmlessly against the massive road wheels. The Tiger's machine guns opened fire, spraying the area where Poole knelt. He rolled sideways, crawled a few feet, and reloaded. Third round. This one hit the turret side, a solid hit. The shaped charge detonating, but the angle was wrong. The jet of molten copper sprayed across the armor but failed to penetrate. The Tiger was turning now, its hull grinding through the snow, its 88mm gun swinging toward Poole's position. At this range, a single round would vaporize him. Poole fired again. Fourth round. He aimed lower this time, at the gap between the hull and the turret ring, a vulnerable point on every tank. The rocket flew true, striking the narrow seam where the turret met the hull. The explosion was muffled, but smoke began to pour from the turret hatches. The shaped charge had penetrated, spraying spall into the fighting compartment. The Tiger's gun fired wildly into the air, a death spasm, the gunner's corpse slumping against the firing mechanism. But the Tiger was not dead. It still moved, still ground forward, still dangerous. Poole reloaded. Fifth round. He crawled closer now, 25 yards, close enough to see the German markings on the hull, close enough to hear the screams from inside. He aimed at the engine deck, where the armor was thinnest, where a single well-placed round could ignite the fuel or ammunition. He fired. The rocket struck the engine grates. Flame erupted from the rear deck, diesel fuel igniting, spreading rapidly. The Tiger lurched to a halt. Its crew began to bail out, black smoke pouring from every hatch. The German infantry, seeing their monster burn, began to fall back. But one Tiger was not enough. Even as the first tank died, Poole saw movement in the fog. Another German armored vehicle, a Panzer IV or perhaps a Panther, advancing to support the attack. The American tank platoon was still pinned down, still vulnerable. Poole had one rocket left. He reloaded the bazooka for the 6th time. His hands were numb with cold. His artificial leg was causing him agony. His body screamed for rest. He stood up and walked toward the second tank. The second tank was a Panther slightly smaller than the King Tiger, but still a lethal opponent, still far beyond the bazooka's intended capabilities. Its crew had seen the first tank die. They knew someone was out there with a rocket launcher. They were hunting him. Poole moved through the smoke from the burning Tiger, using it for cover. He circled wide, trying to get to the Panther's flank. The German tank fired blindly into the smoke, its machine gun stitching patterns across the snow. At 30 yards, Poole dropped to one knee and aimed. The sixth rocket left the tube. It flew true, straight and steady, trailing smoke, closing the distance in less than a second. It struck the Panther's side, just behind the driver's position, exactly where the armor was thinnest. The shaped charge detonated, the jet penetrated, the Panther's ammunition exploded, a massive fireball that blew the turret clean off the hull. Poole collapsed into the snow. When the American tankers reached him, they found him lying in a shell crater, the empty bazooka beside him, his face blackened with smoke, his artificial leg twisted at an unnatural angle. He was conscious, barely, and when they tried to lift him, he waved them off. "Check my tanks," he said. "Make sure they're dead." They were dead. Both of them. Two German armored vehicles, destroyed by one man with 6 rockets and the guts to walk straight at them. The German attack on that sector stalled. The American tank platoon, given time to regroup and reposition, survived to fight another day. The line held just barely, against all odds, thanks in part to a one-legged sergeant from Texas, who refused to quit. Poole was evacuated to the rear, treated for exposure and exhaustion, and eventually returned to his duties as an instructor. He never sought recognition for what he did that day. Indeed, the story is so poorly documented that some historians question whether it happened exactly as told. But the men who were there knew. They saw him walk into the fire. They saw him fire those 6 rockets. They saw the Tigers burn. The Battle of Elsenborn Ridge ended on December 26th, after 10 days of brutal fighting. The Americans held. The 12th SS Panzer Division, despite its elite reputation and superior equipment, could not dislodge them. The German 6th Panzer Army was forced to shift its axis of advance south, into the teeth of even stronger defenses. The ridge became one of the critical turning points of the Battle of the Bulge. If it had fallen, the roads to the Meuse would have been open. The German armored spearheads might have reached Antwerp. The course of the war in the West might have changed. It did not fall. Lafayette Poole's war ended for real this time, in September 1944 or so, the official records say. But the men who served with him knew that War Daddy never really stopped fighting. Whether in a tank, on foot with a bazooka, or later, as an instructor training the next generation of armor soldiers, he gave everything he had to the army he loved. For his actions in France from August 29 to 31, 1944, leading his tank in a series of engagements that destroyed 4 German tanks, 3 anti-tank guns, and approximately 50 unarmored vehicles, Poole received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest award for valor. He also received the Silver Star, the Legion of Merit, the Purple Heart, the French Croix de Guerre, and the Belgian Fourragère Garde. After the war, Poole struggled with the same demons that haunted so many combat veterans. He lost his leg. He lost his tank. He lost friends who never came home. But he found a new purpose in teaching, first as an instructor with the 3rd Armored Division at Fort Knox, then as a preacher after his final retirement from the Army in 1960. He coached Little League Baseball. He raised 8 children. He served his community with the same quiet dedication he had shown on the battlefields of Europe. Lafayette Poole died in his sleep on May 30, 1991, in Killeen, Texas, at the age of 71. He is buried in Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio. In 2024, Fort Moore, formerly Fort Benning, named an access control point in his honor, ensuring that future generations of American soldiers would know his name. Brigadier General Michael Simmering, Chief of Armor, spoke at the dedication. "He was everything. Those of us here at the Armor School aspire to live up to a family man, a technical and tactical expert, a dedicated trainer, a mentor, and a leader of soldiers. His daughter, Christy Reichman, remembered him simply, "Yes, he was a soldier, but he was also a teacher and a preacher who always served." The tank ace of aces, War Daddy, a man who destroyed 258 enemy vehicles in 81 days, who survived the loss of a leg and kept fighting, who walked alone toward a king tiger with nothing but a bazooka and the courage of his convictions. On a frozen ridge in Belgium, in December 1944, a one-legged sergeant from Texas picked up a bazooka and walked straight at a 57-ton king tiger. He fired 6 rockets. He destroyed 2 tanks. He saved an entire platoon. They called him War Daddy. They called him the greatest tanker America ever produced. They called him a legend. But in that moment, alone in the snow, with the monster bearing down and his men trapped behind him, he was simply a soldier doing his duty. His name was Lafayette Poole, and his story reminds us that courage has no limit, no boundary, no end. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to WW2 Folders as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.